we've gotten a message from management. Let it go, let it go, let go of all these items. So now through the end of February, get 22% off the list price of every item in honor of the second month of the year. That includes Ballad Brewing and Three Roads Brewing gift cards, the Yard on 5th Street gift certificates, and gift certificates to Downtown Cairo, Mediterranean and Egyptian, and Duck Donuts. Now at InsaneRadioDeals.com, enter the promo code FROZEN at checkout for 22% off now through February.
We are VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227BG Timberlake at 1320 AM.
This is Zach Gelb with the Sports Minute. The Cleveland Browns will eventually trade Myles Garrett. 5 potential destinations should be the Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, Detroit Lions, and Washington Commanders. And I expect the Commanders already have the face of their offense, Jaden Daniels, to be the most aggressive in the pursuit of the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year, so they can not only find the face of their defense, but also add the finishing touches to the refreshing new version of Josh Harris's Washington Commanders. I'm Zach Gelb.
O'Reilly. Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance specialist for university housing, he knows college students can major in wear and tear. Plus, housing so many students doesn't leave a lot of room to house all the supplies he needs. That's where Grainger comes in. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast, dependable delivery, Grainger carries the quality products he needs so he doesn't have to. From a new door hinge to a whole new faucet. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones.
Allstate agent Donovan Howell is now serving Lynchburg. He lives and works here just like you. And with all kinds of local insurance advice, Donovan is someone you can count on to help you protect all that's good in your life. Donovan makes it easy to save on the quality protection you need, and I'll even help you do the switching and the paperwork for you.
Call or come by the Donovan Howell Allstate office in Windhurst today.
With MedGuard Alert, you're never alone. You can connect with medical professionals anywhere, anytime. And now MedGuard is introducing our exclusive new Care Watch. If you need help quickly, use it from anywhere to contact medical professionals. No cell phone required. The Care Watch is not only a life-saving medical alert device, it's a revolutionary health monitoring system that checks your blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation, and much more. And here's the best part. If you have Medicaid, you may qualify to get your Care Watch for free. The Care Watch is only available through MedGuard Alert. Call us right now. We have monitoring programs starting as low as $1 a day. The call is free, activation is free, shipping is free, and no contract is required. Remember, with Medicaid, you may qualify to get your Care Watch for free. Call us to get your Care Watch right now.
800-681-8020. 800-681-8020. 800-681-8020. That's 800-681-8020.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM, Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Yep, we're going to do it to start the Fast Lane. You already know what's coming.
Time to take a detour in the Fast Lane.
So right before the show began, I get an email, and I am very appreciative of our great listeners out there. We have many of them. But when you're including multiple people in the discussion, the idea of clicking reply all exists for a reason. Like when I have got an email where multiple people are involved in a decision-making process. And look, in sales, you get this all the time. Sometimes there's a marketing person, plus the business owner, plus their assistant, plus 6 other people that get involved. It can sound laborious, but hey, every business operates under its own unique structure. We try to respect that when we're dealing with our partners. and potential partners at the Virginia Talk Radio Network. And this is not relative to many of them. Total separate. But there are times where it's obvious that you need multiple people involved in the process. This is one of those situations. Why do we click reply as opposed to reply all? Like, I am baffled by that. So just had to get that off my chest so that, I could try to function like a normal person today here in the fast lane. Now, and we need to get a sound effect for coming back off the detour back to the fast lane, but that is this. We kind of knew what was going on with Liberty last year. The stat we've brought up for their football team, not basketball, but football. They went 8-3 in the regular season, 8-4 if you include the Bahamas Bowl loss. They were 3-8 or 3-9 if you include the Bahamas Bowl loss against the spread. So they clearly did not meet betting expectations, so to speak. Well, a lot of us kind of understood things might have been going on. And I have alluded to this and we'll continue to reiterate this. And no, our own Philip Doss, newest intern who played football for Liberty, is not in today. I know, conveniently not here, but we welcome him to chime in next time he's back in to the fast lane or the morning warm-up. I'm sure they'll discuss this again with Bryce and Gordon as they already kind of did yesterday, the morning warm-up, wherever you listen to podcasts. But everyone kind of knew that something felt off with the team last year at Liberty. I don't put this blame on the idea that Caden Salter is a bad person. I don't know him on a personal level, so I can't attest to that one way or another. What I can say is it's obvious because he explicitly entered the transfer portal after the Fiesta Bowl, much like wide receiver C.J. Daniels. Unlike Daniels, the market never seemed to materialize for Salter, and he eventually came back to Liberty. Now, again, I don't have a problem with guys moving on and moving up if you get a chance to do that. It's kind of like in work. This is a great example because of the Virginia Talk Radio Network. We bring people on here with the idea of them growing, whether it's growing in their role with us and then moving on or just continuing to grow with us. We want people that continue to push themselves to get better, which means you're going to have those things that pop up. And, it's the reality of it. And if you're talented, we'd love to keep you around. But I've never faulted people for moving on to larger opportunities in bigger areas and bigger situations. It's hard to replicate what I think we can provide in the local area. But in terms of if you want to move to a bigger market, Lynchburg is Lynchburg. Lynchburg is not Las Vegas. It's Lynch Vegas. It's the LBG, not the LBC outside of LA. So keep that in mind. By the way, speaking of LA, 7-time NBA champion, 3 of them with the Lakers, and someone who is based in LA, Robert Horry, slated to join us around 5:45 today in the Fast Lane. We'll talk some college basketball and how to handle things in this era of college athletics because it's so evolving. We can ask all of our guests with different angles. But for Liberty, you knew that it wasn't quite the reality of what met the eye. Like the performance last year backed that up. 3-8 against the spread, 3-9 if you include the bowl game. And kind of got the impression toward that bowl game that the players that were in the bowl game wanted to be there. I don't think there was a lack of effort. I get it. They performed poorly in the bowl game. That should be an indictment against Jamie Chadwell. Really? Did you see what they put out there, Ty? You did. I did. But you kind of wonder if some of the fans did.
I mean, you got to look at that team was like, you could tell like some have them players that have not played at all. They didn't get no snaps. You could, plus Liberty, majority of Liberty's games, probably like 85% of games, there was close games anyway. So it was like, no, they blew out every game. What was it, like 2023 when they was blowing out every team and
Correct.
everything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fiesta
So
Bowl,
yeah. So that's was like, it won't like that. It was like 2024 this year. They was literally in close games almost every single play because like they perform good one half, then they play bad the next half, or they play bad in one half, then play great the next half. So it was like, you know what you was getting from Liberty every game.
It was very inconsistent what we got from Liberty in 2024 compared to those that observed them in 2023, whether you root for or against them, or to some of our listeners, and yes, they exist, you had wagers of various amounts on or against the Liberty Flames. But we kind of knew things were there. And look, it was somewhat obvious just in the raw sense of Caden Salter enters the transfer portal, comes back to Liberty, and I had observed it and have heard this from multiple people that at times the body language just wasn't what you expected for a leader at quarterback. And not to say he's a bad person or a bad kid. I never got the impression that he's a bad kid. But bad and good as a person versus mature and able to handle the job description, especially when You're disappointed the job market didn't materialize the way you wanted. You're going back to Liberty. Theoretically, there's NIL money there. Probably not what he's getting at Colorado. And, maybe you believe or you don't.
Do you believe that? Huh?
But if you're saying that you get more money at Liberty than Colorado, I would say,
oh, no. Oh, no.
And the reality is that, yes, Colorado probably literally.
And guess what? We keep receipts.
They certainly do. So does Liberty. Many people do. Not necessarily public, but they exist. So, look, I don't fault Salter for moving on this year. I hope he does well at Colorado. Like, it seems like he was ready to get out after the Fiesta Bowl, and it didn't materialize, and now he gets to go to Colorado. I am not I hope he sucks there. I hope he does well there, because it felt like he wanted to get out of Liberty after the Fiesta Bowl. It didn't materialize. He came back, and whether the team viewed him differently because he wanted to leave and came back, whether he was more discontent with that situation, which it's kind of like a free agent. I'll use NFL example. Josh Sweat was asked to take a pay cut after last year, goes back to Philadelphia under a restructured and less paying contract this year. Sweat handled it like a professional, played well during the regular season, elevated his play in the playoffs, and in the Super Bowl had a sack and a half and was very disruptive, meaning that he will more than exceed what he was going to make. Probably not in Philly. When you get asked to take a pay cut, unlikely to happen. And Philly, they're going to have to reallocate a lot of resources.
That's definitely true on that one.
But that's the example, Trey. And I get we're talking about a professional in Josh Sweat, legitimate NFL player, versus Kaden Salter, who, I guess you're technically a professional because you're getting paid, but you're not a professional in the sense of understanding what it takes to carry yourself like a professional. And I don't fault him. I think this is a reality throughout college athletics, that they're getting paid, but they're not quite at the spot where they know how to handle it. And yeah, you're a rookie and only a couple of years older, or maybe the same age when you're coming into that money in the NFL. But the big difference is you're on a fixed wage scale and you're in a locker room, no matter where you are, where you've got higher priced veterans who can show you what to do and in some cases what not to do.
I agree with you on that one. I think King Salter's issue was like he did not perform the expectation he's supposed to. And I think last year after the Fiesta Bowl, that was a great chance for him to get out of Liberty and go to a bigger, better school and everything. It's nothing against Liberty, but it's just like he really had the resume that season. It's like, okay, let me play a different conference or a different school and everything, because how he played. But now his performance this past season, it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was terrible. It was kind of like poor a little bit. You see some games, you're like, what is he doing out there? Is he like, does he need to like think about what he been doing? Now he talk about like, now he moved on. I was like, see, last year, his first year was his best time to leave out of it. Now, I just think Colorado's a good school and everything, but it's like either way, that's still like you could have. I don't know about how you play and everything. It was just performance was really terrible. I won't say terrible. It was kind of like
inconsistent
and everything.
It was, and there were moments where he showed the flashes of what you expect. And look, again, this is not he didn't care or try hard. Look at the season finale at Sam Houston State. He's clearly banged up. And Kaden Salter is clearly out there playing when he doesn't have to. And you would presume he knows he's going to enter the transfer portal pretty quickly after the game, which he did. And he may have a destination or a couple of them in mind, which he did. He took visits to Colorado, Syracuse, among other places. So it's clear that was the case. I don't fault the guy in that regard. It's just you're asking a lot maturity-wise, and it takes a while to get acclimated to that. And quarterbacks in particular have more thrust upon them because of their leadership role. But it can create dissension within the locker room when you're in one spot, other people are elsewhere, and when money's involved, to whom more money is given, more is expected that when things are not going well, you have to be the one to elevate yourself and everyone else. And it may be unfair, but that's the reality of being an athlete. And I think it's an adjustment on the fly for a lot of these people, much more so in college, because there are quote agents, end quote. These are not seasoned agents like Drew Rosenhaus or CAA or a lot of those. Some people have them. Some have Tom or Joe or Uncle Bob that just happen to be their friend and they call them an agent. Like, you don't have to be licensed. So you're around that. And you're not around 25 to 30-year-olds in a professional locker room, guys on their second contract who understand what it takes to get there and to sustain that. You just don't have that in college. So you're going to have these particular scenarios. And it's clear from listening to Liberty's players earlier this week, but just observing them last year, that that's the reality. And it's why we're discussing it now, because Liberty's players spoke about it earlier this week. But this is what you've got from the Liberty Flames. And that's just the reality of where they are.
And plus, that could be a distraction too as well. Like, everybody knew even we knew like, okay, he's thinking about leaving because the way he's playing, it's like he don't want to be out there with the team. And I'm like, if all that you could just left last year, we had a chance that just suffering yourself with the team this past season and everything.
Again, here's another professional example. Byron Leftwich had a chance to be an offensive head coach in Jacksonville, and I know who wanted to work with Trent Baalke, obviously Trey's guy, but from the morning warm-up. But he had a chance to go there, didn't take it. Things went south the next year, and his stock was dinged up, and he hasn't gotten a sniff now as a head coach since then. And I still think he's a great offensive coordinator and has the chops, but it's just a perception versus reality of that. Caden Salter, he may not have gotten what he wanted market value-wise after the Fiesta Bowl year, but after this past year, I know he went to Colorado, but I think financially from a position of strength, you're not operating from that. So strike while the iron's hot. If you're that ready to move on, take the best opportunity to go to the next spot. And this was kind of the, I think it was a lose-lose with Salter at Liberty last year. You wanted the best version of Salter, but you just didn't get it. And Salter didn't seem to want to be there. And again, I think it's possible that a split like that is a legitimate win-win. It's a win for Liberty to move on. We'll get to that more today and certainly in the next week or two because their players are speaking out on this. But, I think it's a win for Salter because he kind of gets what he wants to see if he can play at a Power 5 level. He wasn't mature enough to handle it at Tennessee. I don't think that type of immaturity is an issue at Colorado, to my knowledge. The busted twice for weed. I know it's kind of legal out there in Colorado, so maybe that's different. But there's also kind of an intelligence test of like, if you're going to use it, you can't be using it while you're driving. It's like drinking. Like, you may be drinking underage, but if you're driving and drinking underage, it's a real problem versus just using it. Like, there's a level of common sense that goes into that.
And plus, you got to think about it. He got Dion out there, so he's gonna be on his case 24/7 and make him as a real leader like he's supposed to and everything.
And we all know Dion's not afraid to bring up the past because
And guess what? We keep receipts.
he will, good or bad, when it comes to that. So again, this to me is a win-win for Caden Salter's departure. Now, players have spoken out about this. We will maybe get to this tomorrow in the fast lane. We unexpectedly, but in a good way, had a chance to catch up with Robert Horry today. So, when we get a chance to get a 7-time NBA champion to talk some college basketball and figure out what's going on, we're going to take advantage of it, which we will a little bit later. And we will eventually hear from some of the players because we've posted the sound bites already to Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can go check those out and chime in as we always appreciate it. First of all, this is not going to be a topic that goes away during the offseason. I think this is going to be one of the overriding themes of Liberty this year, which is maybe they lose some in terms of raw talent from certainly 2023, but even last year, but maybe they gain more in terms of the pieces of the puzzle fitting well together. And I did an InsaneRadioDeals.com fast take on this on Tuesday, but this is real football, not fantasy football. And you played at Virginia Union Tide, you played at Heritage, where sometimes the most raw talented teams are the best teams. But sometimes the most raw talented teams, the pieces just don't fit as well together as teams that maybe give a little bit, or you take a little bit away in terms of talent, but overall they fit together better and you get the more desired result because you got to get all 11 pieces on offense or defense or special teams working together at the same time.
And it's all about personnel as well as like seeing who can fit who at that spot and everything.
Very much so. Very much. So we'll get into this more depth. It is not a topic that's going away. We appreciate your feedback and look forward to that. Now, 5:25 today in the fast lane. Mike Neff, frontstretch.com, will discuss a number of topics, including one pertaining to Liberty University. His colleague, Tom Bowles, has a great article about how, William Byron wins his second Daytona 500, the Liberty University driver, but maybe kind of the, Jimmy Johnson in this era. Granted, Johnson has 7 championships. Byron only has 2 Daytona 500 wins, 0 NASCAR championships. So they are worlds apart. But in terms of not a lot of oomph and pizzazz, I go a step further. And we can get to this tomorrow in the fast lane, and we will. But I think the biggest win for NASCAR was not William Byron getting the win. It's Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s car finishing in 9th and his excited reaction to that. And the fact that it seems more alive than ever that Dale Earnhardt Jr. would be interested in fielding a Cup team. Because if you're talking about, and I know it's difficult now, but to get sponsors, Dale Jr. clearly is the brand name that people would want to align with. He's a Michael Jordan type name in terms of he immediately commands your attention. And I don't think a lot of people in NASCAR, Ty, but I would imagine of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Michael Jordan as 2 of the biggest involved people in NASCAR.
Yeah, I know who they are and stuff. I know who he is and stuff. But he's like probably one of, you gotta think about it. His name tells it all. You like, when you hear his name, you be like, who? Like, come on, everybody know who he is.
Everybody knows who he is. And a step further, even he was a popular driver in NASCAR.
Yeah.
And he's an owner. Like, you may not know who all the other owners are. You probably know who Joe Gibbs is because he coached. And, Hendrick is a big enough name, but there are a lot of them where if I brought them up, you'd be like, are they an owner or a driver? If I said Justin Marks, you might think he's an owner or a driver, correct? You don't know.
Yeah, I was like, is he like a famous person? Like, is he a regular person? I was like, I don't know who he is, but can you tell who he is?
Exactly. Now, if I said Ross Chastain, you might have the same reaction. Does he drive? Is he an owner? Is he in the pit crew? You're going to go with that.
Yeah.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. cuts through that. Know he used to be a driver and now he owns the team. And if he's invested, there's so much more excitement. So we will get to that around 5:25 today here in the Fast Lane. But before we do that, back to college sports in the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
According to Sports Business Journal, men's college basketball viewership during the month of January down 21%, while women's was down 38%. There are two things to note for this. One of which is this is January. I would expect there to be some level of a market correction in February and in March. I will be interested to know, though, how much it's an SEC dominant league and if that's bad or good for college basketball. And we can kind of get the brains of Robert Horry. We'll pick them around 5:45 today in the Fast Lane. But whether it being so SEC dominant and not a lot of basketball history, and that's not a basketball first conference, but they're so much better than the ACC. The results don't lie. The SEC, the ACC challenge, the fact they have, they will have 12 to 14 teams in the tournament, whether that plays a role. And then the ACC and their biggest brands, Duke is great, but Carolina, they're down. NC State made the Final Four last year. They're abysmal. Miami and Virginia have made recent Final Fours, and neither one of them are having good years. All of those are factors that contribute to that. And the women's is obvious. It's going to be down. As great as Juju Watkins is at USC and Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame, Caitlin Clark drove so much viewership that it's kind of like golf. Tiger's gone. Golf is better than it was before Tiger, but not what it was during its heyday. That's an easy explanation. But the men is the one I'm more interested in following.
I mean, you got to think about it. Like you said, it's a down year for most college programs like UNC, all that. It's been a down year for them. But either way, the SEC, like, they deserve a lot of respect because they always been like a powerhouse school. If basketball, it's just football has been taken over and everything because of their, Alabama there. But SEC is still part of like, hey, we got some teams too that can dominate the college level as well in basketball.
Speaking of college sports and college basketball in particular,
number 4,
momentum is picking up for a 76-team NCAA men's basketball tournament as early as next year, 2026. Momentum is also picking up for an expanded college football playoff to 14 or 16 teams with 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC and the Big 10, 2 for the ACC and the Big 12. That gets you to 12, 1 for the group of 5 champions so that there's no antitrust lawsuit saying that everybody could theoretically get in. And then you would have 1 at-large for the 14th for Notre Dame or 3 at-larges, potentially Notre Dame and 2 others on top of that. Look, we're going to get to 16 teams. This is a flex. In a perfect world, you think expansion, and it's more of the little guy. The reality is if you follow what's going on with the SEC and the Big 10 and the fact that they're talking about how this is what they want, but they want to give the other conferences a chance to offer their opinions. And really, I think it's really, they want to hear what the Big 12 and the ACC have, because I think there's schools in those conferences they would still want to add and maybe want to form some type of big power conference conglomerate in 2031 when all these TV contracts expire. I think that's the ulterior motive, but they're shielding behind this. We want to still include everybody while still making it clearly known by expanding the men's basketball tournament and the college football playoff that this is done because the SEC wants you to know that they have
lots of power,
and the Big 10 wants you to also know that they have
lots of power.
I just feel like the SEC and the Big 10 trying to take over college football. Like, well, we got the best teams. Everybody wants to see us play instead of other teams. Like, that doesn't mean nothing because we got other programs that can beat y'all. Y'all just don't want to put them part of the picture because look at y'all names. It's SEC and Big 10. Everybody care about them.
And that's the part that turns me off as a fan is I'm under no delusion. The SEC and the Big 10, especially with adding Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC, and Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA to the Big Ten. They have more big brands, and they clearly have more, as Kenny Powers would remind us,
dollar bills, y'all,
to be able to interject to pay players, which is more important than ever before. But when you totally freeze out a large chunk of other fans, you're taking away the opportunity for them to at least hope that they could have some type of opportunity, as we beep out that cursed four-letter word. You want them to at least be able to believe, and you want to be able to sell some hope to those particular fan bases. And if you totally box them out, that's where I think you start to go, okay, this is really just the NFL and the NBA light. And if I'm going to watch professionals, I might as well watch the better product in the better league.
I definitely agree with you on that. That's why I feel like this is just get out of hand right now.
Number 3.
Saturday night's primetime matchup between the USA and Canada and the Four Nations face-off averaged 4.4 million viewers on ABC. When Canadian numbers are included, it went well over the NBA All-Star mark of 10.1 million viewers. The NBA went from 5.3 million to 4.7 for the All-Star game this year. Look, this is earth-shattering in this sense. Hockey was almost on par with the NBA, and the NBA is a wildly more popular league than hockey. So the fact that hockey came in and had a chance to top the NBA speaks to something that we've discussed in the Fast Lane yesterday, Ty and Trey did earlier this week, and that is the NBA All-Star format is not going away because there's just too much business that gets done there. But in terms of selling me as a fan on paying attention to it, absolutely not. I have zero desire to consider any of this at all.
Number 2.
Meanwhile, Brandon Marcello of CBS Sports has learned that college coaches are considering NFL-style OTAs as a replacement for spring games amid roster tampering and injury concerns. Texas was the latest school today to join in that potential push of moving off of those type of games. Texas, of course, doing the first one. They joined USC, Ohio State, and Nebraska in canceling these games. This is just going to become a more common trend. Some are going to cite tampering. Some are going to cite wear and tear. We go to spring games, you and I do, Todd, but I'm under no delusion that they carry any level of weight. It's more, I get a chance to see what some of these parts look like in a very rough, loose setting in spring football.
Like I said, it's getting too far now. It's like you worry about certain, but this has been going on for decades and decades. Now you want to say something about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I play spring ball. I mean, I ain't like it, but it still got us better. And you figure out, okay, this is what we got going into the fall. It shows you like, okay, this is what we're working with to see we need to add some more pieces and everything. I don't understand why people want to change it now.
Number 1.
Notre Dame Athletic Director Pete Bavacqua has come out and said this, according to David Teal of DailyPress.com, the Hall of Fame reporter, that Notre Dame would like to have more football games against Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, which, here's a shocker, those are the 3 biggest brands when it comes to college football. You can rope in the other Magnificent 7 schools like, I think NC State's a tag-along for North Carolina, and Virginia's a tag-along for Virginia Tech. But Virginia Tech, North Carolina, and Louisville would probably be the others worth mentioning. But it's clear that Notre Dame does not have much use for playing games against teams like Syracuse and Wake Forest and Georgia Tech when there's just not that level of fan interest compared to other schools.
Why did you join the ACC then? That's all I understand.
Because as an independent, they have
Lots of power.
And therefore, if they're asked to join the ACC, which they have been, that would be
rejected,
as the hair gel commercial would remind us. Meanwhile, when we come back in the fast lane, Mike Neff, his insight is not rejected. We'll get his insight on NASCAR, including whether the biggest win for NASCAR was not William Byron and the Liberty car going back-to-back to the Daytona 500 victory lane, but instead Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s team and what they did in the 500. That when we return. This is the Fast Lane, VTR and Sports app, 93.3 FM.
We are making it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With the best selection, value, finance options, and exceptional service. Plus 900 pre-owned vehicles all in one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one-stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile with finance options for every budget. 900 used vehicles in stock now. More than any other dealer in the area. Hurry in for straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Why wait? Make it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Your home is more than just walls and windows.
It's where life happens. And at Right Choice Construction, we get that. We're not just builders. We're fathers, mothers, neighbors, just like you. And every nail and every beam reflects our commitment to creating a place you're proud to live in. With Right Choice Construction, you're choosing a team that's been perfecting the art of building for years. So build with us, build with experience, build with quality, build with Right Choice.
Thursday on the morning warm-up, Ty and myself offer our thoughts on possible changes to the college football playoff as the Big Ten and the SEC seize control of it. Friday, Matthew Atkins, my co-host from the Foul Ball Area Podcast, joins us to talk all things baseball. Listen to the morning warm-up, weekday mornings, 7 to 8 a.m. on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, 1320 a.m., and on the VTRN Sports app. Also, streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/VTRN Sports Lynchburg.
Hi, I'm Zach Mackey, the voice of Virginia Tech men's basketball. Catch the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle weekdays 5 to 6 p.m. on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, and the VTRN Sports app.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
So, I have to give you my regular old confession that I don't remember a ton about the heyday of Darrell Waltrip or Richard Petty in NASCAR, but I do remember a ton about Dale Earnhardt. I remember the tail end of the Petty and the Waltrip eras where they were running races, but not nearly as competitive as they were in the late 80s and early 90s when I was a wee lad. But I remember Dale Earnhardt, the Intimidator. I remember my favorite moment of his ever. Well, two of them. One, the Terry Labonte shove out of the way at Bristol, just rattling his cage. The other, which is not included in Mike Neff's article at frontstretch.com today, which is Jeremy Mayfield nudges Dale Earnhardt out of the way coming out of turn 3 at Pocono and then passes him, gets the win, shakes his fist out the window as he's crossing the finish line to get the victory. And of course, Dale Sr. comes up beside him and flicks him off and tells him that he's number one of the all-time great moments in NASCAR. But it brings a bigger picture to what we have been discussing in the Fast Lane, and we will get more into this tomorrow. But we get perspective now before we get into this, so maybe we can temper our thoughts and correct them. Mike Neff of frontstretch.com is with us in the Fast Lane. He's got that article up today about a life without the Intimidator. And it is a great segue into our point and kind of what his colleague Tom Bowles of frontstretch.com wrote yesterday, because Tom mentioned that while popular in our backyard because he went to Liberty, William Byron doesn't have that pizzazz of owners. Is this an unreasonable, potentially hot take, Mike, as we are glad to have you back in the Fast Lane? That while it's great in our backyard for the Liberty car and driver William Byron to get to victory lane for the second consecutive year in the Daytona 500, the more impactful for NASCAR as a sport result was Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s team, JR Motorsports with Justin Allgaier, finishing ninth, and Dale Jr.'s reaction that this may be the launch point he needs for a bigger role in Cup, which would presumably give NASCAR a second Michael Jordan-like figure in the Cup Series.
Yeah, without a doubt. It has been surprising to me somewhat that Dale Jr. has not jumped into Cup before now. But at the same time, you have to temper that with the fact that, and let's face it, Dale Jr. is notoriously cheap. When he first was taking Ubers and started trying to call and request some, drivers were turning him down. And he was talking to his friends about, why would these people turn me down? And they looked at his ratings, and his ratings were all horrible. And it was because he didn't tip worth a dang. And you got a guy that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he's a tightwad. So that is understandable as to why he hasn't wanted to jump in. I actually saw an article online this week that he made the comment, I'm not going to spend my children's inheritance to go Cup racing. So I view that I understand he doesn't want to spend a lot of his own money, but at the same time, I mean, that's what's been floating Junior Motorsports for so long, was his ability to bring sponsors in. If he would run a race or two, they would get on board with 5 or 6 or 7 more races to help fund the team. So the ability is there for him to make the transition, and I think this success certainly might have spurred him on a little more. I got to imagine being around Hendrick Motorsports, being partnered with them so much, and seeing the overall success that organization has had for decades has got to be enough to inspire him to eventually make this jump.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to think so. And, there's a trial balloon element to Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s team being in the NASCAR Cup Series race the first time ever, the Daytona 500 this past Sunday. But also, you mentioned the Hendrick Motorsports partnership. How much is that the type that could ease the concerns of Dale Earnhardt Jr., which you mentioned he's a tightwad? And I found it funny because he mentioned this, and it was Dalton Hopkins, I believe, your frontstretch.com colleague, who has the piece up at Front Stretch, the YouTube channel, the full interview of Dale Earnhardt Jr. after this Sunday's Daytona 500, where Jr. kind of said, I can't, and then he backtracked off and said, I won't go at this alone. How much of it, that kind of doubles down to what you were saying, which is, I mean, if Dale Jr. wanted to go in full force to be a Cup owner, the resources seem like they would be there, but it seems like for maybe his own risk tolerance sake, and that's personal to everybody, that's really the thing that's holding him back.
Yeah, I agree. He doesn't want to make a commitment that's going to drain his bank account. And I mean, granted, he has a substantial bank account, but at the same time, you look at Rick Hendrick, and Rick Hendrick makes a lot of money racing. Don't let him fool you. But he makes a ton more money selling cars. And right now, Dale Jr., yes, he's got his High Rock Vodka, and he's got the podcast and Dirty Mo Media, and a few other things, Filter Time, that he's a partner in. So he's got some other ventures, but it's nowhere near the level of Rick Hendrick and Roger Penske that are global magnets in multiple operations that have got the money coming in to help support their operations if they need it. But again, Rick Hendrick pulls in a lot of sponsors from outside. So does Roger Penske. Roger Penske, to be fair, has really mastered the business-to-business side of it and leverages some things that are not direct money investments, but ways to share value across the board with his sponsors, and does a lot of business-to-business stuff that makes a lot of money for him and his other ventures. Dale Jr.'s, I mean, he's older, but he's not that old in the business management sense of things. He's only been really running his own stuff for 15 years or so. So give him some more time to really learn from Rick Hendrick and learn from some of these other folks. But I think he's learning on the fly how to make a Cup team make money just by spending so much time with Rick Hendrick and with Jeff Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, those are both parts that are key, is learning and being around that. How much of this also, Dale Earnhardt Jr. being in the Cup Series, the Daytona 500, finishing ninth, is not just the proof of concept, but to him, and maybe reassuring Dale Earnhardt Jr. with his risk tolerance, but also being able to point to something and you would think generate and solicit interest from sponsors, because if there's ever a driver out there and a driver or owner or personality in NASCAR, there are two that come to the top of the mind in terms of if they call you up directly and ask you to meet, it's Michael Jordan and Dale Earnhardt Jr. that people are going to say yes just to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, without a doubt. I have to think that if you get a phone call as a business owner from Dale Earnhardt Jr. that says, hey, I would like to partner with you on my race team, that's some exposure that you really want to look at. I mean, let's be fair. Gotta love Corey LaJoie. He's a friend of mine, and I was really excited that he was leading the race with less than 10 laps to go, but it didn't pan out for him. But Corey, try as he might, does not have the pull to get the sponsorship, which is why he doesn't have a full-time ride this year. Dale Jr., just by picking up the phone and talking to somebody, has enough pull to get a few $1 million out of a sponsor for a race or two.
It totally changes the equation. What Dale Earnhardt Jr. is able to do. Mike Neff changes the equation and is with us here in the Fast Lane. Mike, a couple minutes left, and we appreciate your time. NASCAR heads to Atlanta. I love what they've done with Atlanta, although I wish they had done it to Texas because, I mean, anything is better than Texas. As you know, I'm not exactly a fan of that place. But why do we have two of the similar type of tracks at the beginning of the schedule when you would think spreading this out and allowing, maybe a month or two to go by and then coming back to Atlanta would make a little bit more sense in terms of spreading out the volume of tapered spacer tracks as opposed to doing it back-to-back?
Yeah, I'm with you. I would like to have seen them at least put it somewhere near the midway point between Daytona and Talladega. Give these guys a chance to rebuild race cars, because God knows we tear up a ton of them when we go through Daytona and Talladega. So having to have literally 4 cars ready for every team, because you got to have a car and a backup at Daytona, and then you got to have a car and a backup for Atlanta. So you have to have 4 cars ready before you roll out for speed weeks, is a lot of an ask on these teams, even though it is coming out of the off season. But I'm with you. It's funny to me that it has seemed like NASCAR has always treated Atlanta like a redheaded stepchild. I mean, look at the fact that for years, Atlanta was the last race in the season, and they struggled to get fans in the stands because 95% of the time, the championship was decided before it got there. So they had to struggle to get people in the stands. They decide finally to give Atlanta a move and bump them up in the schedule a little bit before the last race of the year. And then, lo and behold, they come out with the chase the very next year and screw them out of having the championship race at the end of the year. It seems like Atlanta has always had to battle to get a worthwhile race date to draw people in, and this is no different.
You and me both, Neff. It's not something I enjoy, but as far as the timing of it, I like Atlanta, but like you, I'd love to have it spaced out a little bit more and think there are better ways to do things with the NASCAR schedule. Not much better in terms of getting the insight. It's easy. Frontstretch.com, including Neff's article on a life without the Intimidator, which is debuted today, and MNeff Short Track on Twitter and Instagram. Neff, always good to catch up with you in the fast lane. We're starting to make this more of a regular thing, and that's got me excited.
It's an honor as always talking to you guys, brother. I appreciate you making time for me to be on.
Indeed. Mike Neff with us here in the fast lane. When we return, a different kind of pivoting to basketball. Big Shot Bob talking college hoops next here in the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app.
We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, you also do a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that, and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook, and our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
When shopping for auto liability insurance, it's wise to consider the best policy, not the cheapest. Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. It's crucial to have more than the minimum insurance on your auto liability policy. This protects you if you injure someone or if someone without proper insurance hurts you. Having the right policy ensures you have sufficient underinsured coverage to take care of you and your family. To learn more how we can help you navigate these challenges, visit us at trostlaw.com. That's trostlaw.com.
At InsaneRadioDeals.com, we've gotten a message from management. Let it go, let it go, let go of all these items. So now through the end of February, get 22% off the list price of every item in honor of the second month of the year. That includes Ballad Brewing and Three Roads Brewing gift cards, the Yard on 5th Street gift certificates, and gift certificates to Downtown Cairo, Mediterranean and Egyptian, and Duck Donuts. Now at InsaneRadioDeals.com, enter the promo code FROZEN at checkout for 22% off now through February.
Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the fast lane.
So we like to joke as we welcome you back into the fast lane. We like to joke about a lot of things, but as we welcome you back into the fast lane, one of the things we like to joke is the signs of the times, signs of the apocalypse, things you may never have thought that you would actually be seeing. And one of those examples is the fact that in this day and age, it's the SEC basketball, not football, but basketball league, which may be one of the best college basketball leagues of all time. And the ACC, certainly in our backyard here in Virginia, on the Virginia Talk Radio Network, we've had plenty of years of good basketball. This definitely is not one of them in that top-heavy conference, but it's worth just kind of looking at things through that different lens as we welcome in the next guest here into the fast lane. 7-time NBA champion, and analyst for Compass Media Networks. You've heard him already this season on the VTRN Sports app, and we'll continue to hear him more as we head towards March Madness in the coming weeks. Robert Horry with us in the Fast Lane. Robert, great to be speaking with you. Did you ever think you would see the day as an Alabama Crimson Tide grad where the Iron Bowl in basketball had a lot more significance in a football season than the Iron Bowl in football?
I had no clue it'd be that significant. You know, number one versus number two. Didn't ever think I'd see it in my lifetime. I've been more proud if it had been during my time at the Capstone at Alabama. But you know, it was a great game to watch. Two good teams playing basketball. But I think, you know, the best team won. That was Auburn, and I hate to say that, but I got to be honest.
Yeah, well, we appreciate the honesty. It gives us some fodder here in the Fast Lane. And one of the points that's been a talking point in college basketball, and for those in the ACC that are clinging to whatever pride we can find in a down year for the conference, and I don't think many people thought they would do this, but the Duke Blue Devils being the example. Are we at the point now where obviously you got probably a bitter taste, but a taste of Auburn this past Saturday, and we've seen Duke, including at Virginia earlier this week. Are those the two definitive best teams right now in college basketball?
I think so. I've been watching Duke play and, you know, watching what Cooper Flagg is able to do for that team, and the fact that, you know, the coaching there has been great. He's been able to recruit. You know, it's so hard to replace someone like Coach K. You see they're having that issue over at North Carolina. And in Alabama and football is having that issue it's great. Are you able to keep that run going? Are you able to get people still to buy in to the university? Because a lot of times guys buy into the coach. But if you buy into the university like Duke, which is a great university, and able to go and do your thing, then it's a great job on the coaching staff and all the coaches have been there.
Compass Media Network's analyst Robert Horry is with us in the Fast Lane. He will be seeing ACC and SEC teams coming up, including Kentucky at Alabama this coming Saturday, Duke at North Carolina a couple of weeks from now, games you'll be able to hear right here on VTRN Sports for those who are listening live. And if you have just checked us out on the podcast, the VTRN Sports app is your resource for that 24/7. You mentioned the coaching part and replacing legendary coaches. You referenced your alma mater, Alabama, with football with Nick Saban. You mentioned Duke. Looks like they've done a good job with John Shire taking over for Coach K. Carolina, a lot more iffy. And I know you'll see those teams March 8th, Compass Media Networks, when you're covering that game. Is that something that's overrated in this day and age in terms of the brand name and cachet of the program, or does that still carry weight and significance if you combine that with the right coach and, yes, the NIL resources that are more important than ever?
Well, I think, you know, with Hubert Davis taking over there at North Carolina, you know, coming from an NBA standpoint, playing in the NBA for so long, you would think that he would have the cachet where he could bring people in. And if that didn't work, the greatest player to play this game, you know, Michael Jordan, way to get guys coming, but it's not the case. And I think, you know, I'm not familiar with it, but I think it has a lot to do with the program as a whole. When I say the program, that means every sport that's involved in the program. And you take universities like Alabama, Texas, Stanford, you know, all these great universities have like programs across the board that are good, you know, golf, baseball, not just the two dominant ones, basketball and football. You able to get that NIL money. You able to, you know, use that not just for just, you know, your program, but the other programs within the school system. So I think if you look at North Carolina, now that they got, you know, Bill Belichick there as the head coach, I think more money will be pouring into the program. And then that will benefit the basketball program. And it's just a waterfall effect that everybody gets a little taste of it. And, you know, even though Duke is not known for their football program, but their basketball program is so great that, you know, and it has such great following that they're going to get players that come in there.
Robert, you'll get an interesting look at that this coming Saturday for Compass Media Networks as Robert Horry is with us here in the Fast Lane, because your matchup this Saturday, Kentucky at your alma mater, Alabama. It's Kentucky, which is the blue blood in basketball, but they've gotten better at football lately. Meanwhile, Alabama's the blue blood in football, and you could argue, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that and the SEC as a whole, the great success they've had in football has helped them elevate and have the resources and cachet now to succeed in basketball. Where am I wrong in that observation and need your correction? Where might I actually be onto something?
absolutely right. And it's not me being biased. I just think the SEC overall is the best conference. Time they dominated. Alabama and Florida dominated in gymnastics, and then if you go over to golf and in baseball, Tennessee has always had a great program in baseball, and it's just, I think when you look at the whole college environment, that a lot of those colleges are in other systems. Let's say if you went there as a student, you're basically walking to a city. I live out in LA, and it's like walking onto a USC or UCLA campus totally different than walking on a Texas campus, Alabama campus, or Ole Miss campus. It's that hometown feel instead of a big city feel. And I think a lot of times when guys get there, they kind of fall in love with that. They fall in love with that small town feel, which generates, a better sense of family. And you get together, and you hang out as teammates. You get to know your teammates a little bit better. And when you know your teammates a little better, that develops that bond, and you kind of fight for them a little bit more. So it's just fun, to me, to think that SEC is the best conference in the land. I know some people probably listen like, no, it's not. ACC is no Big Ten, no Big 12. But I just think with the addition of Texas, you get the rivalry back with Texas A&M. It makes the conference that much better than every other conference in the land.
RK Horry is the Twitter account for Robert Horry. They've got the episode, by the way, there for the 200th Big Shot Bob podcast, which is dropped. Total side note, and we don't have the sound effects ready, so forgive me for the take a detour in the fast lane sound effect for our listeners. Did you ever think when you were getting into this media side of things as an analyst for Spectrum Sports out in LA and obviously Compass Media Networks and doing the Big Shot Bob pod that you would get to 200 podcasts?
Negative. I thought I would fizzle out after 100 or maybe even 10 because I was like, is this for me? But let me just say this. And Rob Jenners, the guys I work with, they carry me. My name might be on it, but it's those two guys, especially with Rob Jenners, the producer, he comes up with all the questions and he deep dives into the big shot of the week. And, E. Harper is one of those guys that loves all sports and a big Laker fan. So they make it easy for me, and I think that's why I've made it to the 200th episode. Hopefully we'll make it to 400 or whatnot. But it's just so much fun to talk shop with people from another part of the country because they live in Atlanta, I live in L.A.
Yeah, you're on the West Coast. You're out there in the wildest area when it comes to the NBA news that's popped in the last couple of weeks. We're going to table that, by the way, in the fast lane so I don't get too distracted here, Robert. But to college basketball and to stick with that, we mentioned this weekend with Kentucky against Alabama. This time of year is the time where many listeners are just checking into college basketball, but folks like us, we're kind of, eyeing who might be our dark horses when the brackets come out. Kentucky, are they a logical candidate? And Alabama deserving of being mentioned in that same breath is the top teams in the country that could be in the Final Four and maybe cutting down the nets in a few months.
Well, if you look at Kentucky is one of those teams, that had a coaching transition with Calipari leaving, but they have a lot of young talent. But they sometimes play like a wild horse. You don't know what you're going to get. So when you get into a situation where you're playing the Kentucky Wildcats and you're playing these guys, and you got guys like Butler and Robinson, who is one of the most talented guys in the SEC. If Robinson can get hot, he can really carry that team a long way. But I still think this weekend, Alabama has lost 2 games in a row. I think Kentucky is going to get the worst end of that.
Yeah, I mean, you got an Alabama team that's desperate, especially after last night where they lost at Missouri and, coach going out and asking the fans to not rush the court, which was rather amusing and seemed to elicit some negative reactions from the fans out there at Mizzou. You mentioned the Alabama part to this. Is there a blessing in disguise? We see other teams at different junctures go through this where you're a tournament caliber team, but you experience some kind of adversity at this juncture of the year. Is that a blessing in disguise in the sense that you learn to fight through that and you're not caught off guard when things may not go your way once the big dance arrives?
Well, I think, from watching them in the last couple of games, they've had a lot of adversity. You've had 2 guys. Coach Broom and Auburn has been the toughest players in the country. And then I think it was Mitchell last night had a career high with 31. Or was it Miller? But he had a career high. And it's just like people, you got to understand, each and every night. And I think this little stretch right here, and it's going to make them ready. And I don't care if they win or lose these games, but mentally, they're going to be prepared. They go into the big tournament because when they get in the big dance, you got one game and one shot. And I think these games are preparing them. And I think the way Mark Sears has been playing lately, he had a bad game against Auburn for his standards, but last night against Mizzou, he had a good game. So hopefully he's gotten that rust off and he's able to go out and play very well. But, it ain't about just him. I think if you look what Grant Nelson did last year against North Carolina, I feel like Nate Oates needs to look at that and use him a little more, because when you get one-sided offense, only going to one person, that kind of let the defense key in on him. But I'm going down the Alabama rabbit hole. Sorry about that, but I'm just saying that in order for them to be successful, they're going to have to use more of their offensive firepower.
Robert, you mentioned going down the Alabama rabbit hole. Again, I don't have the Usher soundbite to mention that they're my confessions, but I am confessing to you here in the fast lane, which is I've heard from North Carolina fans that, Nate Oates is a guy they would love to have if Hubert Davis doesn't pan out. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, in all honesty, this offseason. Do you worry at all about that? Not just North Carolina, but in general, or, with what Nate Oates has done at Alabama in general, that he's a guy that seems to have found a spot that fits his personality. And I know they're not in Auburn's level. Sorry, again, please forgive me for saying that right now, but they're in a spot where they can legitimately every year, even at Alabama, contend for a Final Four. And we know what can happen when you get there.
Yeah, you think about Alabama's first time in the program's history going to the Final Four last year, and what Coach Oates has done for the program has been amazing. If he goes to goes to North Carolina, I think the Alabama program, is going to probably suffer, because you lose two coaches like Nick Saban, like Oates, that have taken guys to the promised land. It'd be crucial for the program, but that just means I would have to come out of retirement and become a coach and put that program back in the spotlight like it has been by Oates and when Wimp was there. But, if he goes to North Carolina, because I know and I feel like Hubert Davis is on the hot seat, because when you got a historical program like the Tar Heels and you don't make the big dance and you don't get the recruits, that Tar Heels faithful is going to be a little upset. And so I don't think he's going to go there, though, because I think Alabama has enough money to keep him at Alabama.
Not just keep him, but to get the resources in Alabama. They've clearly been in a good spot in the last handful of years. Thanks to what Nate Oates has done, you'll hear them against Kentucky this coming Saturday as part of our slate of college basketball on the VTR and Sports app. And yes, in a couple of weeks, you'll be at the Dean Dome for Duke at North Carolina. You mentioned North Carolina, and the pressure intensifies for a guy like Hubert Davis when the results aren't there. How much does that magnify or get magnified when the folks in Chapel Hill see what's happening across the way over in Durham with the team that is a legitimate national title threat and arguably the best player in college basketball? If it's not Janai Broome of Auburn, it's Cooper Flagg of Duke.
Yeah, Cooper Flagg is a phenom. He's able to do whatever the team needs. But I think if Hubert Davis, it's like when it comes to Alabama and Auburn. If you beat Auburn, you good for another year. I don't know if it works like that in North Carolina and Duke, but that last game of the year, Duke versus North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Hubert Davis has got to come up with something in order to be able to beat these guys, because a lot of those guys they have on North Carolina are outstanding. But I think Hubert, he's a great coach, and I had the pleasure of playing against him for many years when he was with New York Knicks. I got to know him. He was in the same draft class. Great individual. Just hopefully, he can, keep his job and beat Duke, because you always root for the underdogs. I'm rooting for. I can't root for someone, but in the back of my mind, I'm rooting for my friend Hubert Davis.
Well, that will get tested this Saturday if you can root for someone or not, because we will be listening and grading astutely. Hopefully, not sending negative feedback, of course, from our listeners to RK Ori on Twitter. But when you're calling your alma mater, Alabama, against Kentucky, part of our Saturday slate right here on the VTR and Sports app, and asking that smart speaker, open VTR and Sports. Robert, thank you for your time talking some college basketball here in the Fast Lane. We don't want to eat up all your time, but we'd love to catch up again down the road and maybe toward the NBA playoffs where we can do more promoting. Maybe we'll get to 225 by that point, episodes of the Big Shot Bob podcast.
It sounds good, man. Let's talk NBA hoops next time. Because I think about next time I talk to you, we'll have a national champion. Hopefully that's Alabama.
Yeah, well, from your lips to many folks' ears, especially if they have them in their bracket. Robert, thank you much. Enjoy the call this coming Saturday, and we look forward to chatting again soon.
All right, take care, man.
Indeed, Robert Horry with us here to wrap up the Fast Lane, a fun way to go around in college basketball and kind of get the tie of the national stories in with the local angle. If you missed anything, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, where you listen to podcasts, we're back tomorrow afternoon at 5. Thanks for listening to The Fast Lane on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.
This is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.